I'm here, Byron Haskins, with Nathaniel, Nat Needle, class of 76, Wesleyan University. And this is part of our alumni chat series. And I'm just really happy that Nat, that you agreed to sit and talk with me for a while about Wesleyan, about stuff you're doing. We're chatting because back at the last reunion, we decided, because we were virtual, that we would do some videos and post them so that people can, in the absence of being able to get together and have these chats, and it turned out to be an idea that I thought I'd just like run with and do them leading up to our 50th reunion coming up in 4 years. And this is a great opportunity for people who didn't spend a lot of time with each other chatting.
Yes, it is. That's a good, very good observation. I think that's true.
And our paths crossed. You and I mean, you spent some time in Michigan.
It did.
But we never talked to each other. We never got to see each other while you were in Michigan.
Well, you were in Lansing.
Yeah, I was in Lansing. I was in Ann Arbor for a little while, but I think I left Ann Arbor before you got there.
Yes, probably. I was there 91 to 96.
Yeah, and I was in Lansing during that time, and still have a house there in Lansing, and we have some things in common, but not necessarily in common in how, because you see, like my music equipment behind me. I really enjoyed music. I always have listened to music. I was a radio DJ in high school, at Wesleyan. Even afterwards, I found places that I could DJ, so I could surround myself with music. So
I've really enjoyed your videos.
To a musician, a real musician.
I've really enjoyed your videos a lot. I've sent you some admiring comments.
I have. Thank you. I don't check on my videos that much because I don't get a lot of traffic,
Oh.
So, and even I consider them unusual. So it's not going to be for the popular crowd. And in my group, I call the ignorant savants because I don't know anything about music. I just pick up, like one of my albums that I put out recently, releases on SoundCloud, is called Play Me, and the song is about just pick up the thing and play it. You don't need to know anything, which is counter to what you do, Nat, is teach people how to appreciate and play and understand music. And tell me about this, because I think this goes way back with you. When did you start playing music?
Well, I started playing music when I was very small, and but when I was 5, they tried me on lessons, but I was not ready for that. I wasn't in control of my body or my emotions. I don't know if I guess I'm doing better than I was when I was 5 now, I have to say.
A lot better.
Well, I don't know. It depends. I'll just go yes, I guess a lot better. It's true. How nice, what a nice thing. So anyway.
Well, Nat, you teach people how to play.
I do. So, one thing about music and why I like it is it's more acceptable to say that there are different ways of knowing, right?
Right.
Different ways of knowing.
Yeah.
So there are ways that somebody can study music and know a lot of things, but they still have trouble recognizing in a beat of 1, 2, 3, 4, where 1 is and where 2 is and where 3 is and where 4 is. So that there's a lack of foundation, lack of connection, for example, just to your own blood flow, your own heartbeat, your own body rhythm. And that translates into a difficulty in making music. So the kind of knowing sometimes that I'm engaging people with is being able to locate their own heartbeat, right? Locate their own body rhythm, the rhythm of their own body. And without, dancing around most of the time, mostly just, sitting on a bench, but could involve other kinds of movement, doesn't usually, I teach in my apartment, there's too many things to knock over. I don't want to have to student proof the place every time somebody comes in. So most of the stuff, I don't feel like I need to have people do a lot of gross motor stuff to do that. But I would definitely, if I felt it was necessary, I would work that. I would do that. Not usually necessary, but
you teach this.
Yes, but it's not, this is an extension of everything else. If you lose that connection, if you don't have that connection and you're just from the wrist down, you can tell. And that's not just like jazz, it's classical music, it's any kind of music.
You teach people how to feel the music then.
Well, some people you don't have to teach them that, right? Some people, that's what they come with. And so there's other stuff you need to teach, right? But if somebody's missing that, then I think we don't need to exclude everything else to focus on that, but that we need to carry that along. So there are all these different, what we learn is that the human being has many different ways of knowing. And sometimes the knowing has to include a healthy dollop of not knowing, of being willing to not know, or being willing to allow some knowing that's really mysterious, or we don't know where it is or where it comes from. And if we scientifically analyzed it, we would lose it in the process. You know what I'm saying?
It gets kind of to, and I know that one of your achievements that you can find online with your stuff is the American Buddhist Songbook. And,
right.
and what I'm hearing from you is a sort of a mindfulness sort of.
Yeah, I don't want to be unnecessarily mysterious or esoteric about it, but there's a certain necessary mystery. I mean, there's stuff we don't know. So we have to honor, there's an interplay between, you could say, the knowing part, knowing how to do, but like even in the midst of knowing how to do stuff, you pick up a toothbrush, you brush your teeth. I mean, how really do you do that? And at what point can we analyze it and break it down to synapses and axons and dendrites and neurotransmitters and chemicals and everything like that? And we still don't know any more about it. We may know less about it. And so we just in teaching music there's more acceptance because all these things affect the outcome of the performance. I mean, what you hear, what you listen to, and your experience of performing, and your experience of connecting with your audience, and all the things that go into being a performing artist. They don't have to be so esoteric. They can have real concrete results, right?
Yeah. I mean, and sort of that's where I come from, is that I have no training in music history, in music theory, but I come from a musical family. Mm-hmm. And so I grew up with music all around me all the time. So right. So I just reflect what I know. Mm-hmm. And that's it. And I don't know what I don't know, but sometimes I try to go those places.
Right. Well, I think you started out as a musician. You came to this sort of already being a musician, and having some identity one way or another as a musician. And that enables you to just go on an adventure without being, inhibited by, I don't have this piece or this component. You go for it. And if at some point in your journey, Byron, doing what you need to do, you find, that missing component that's hanging me up, I better deal with that, get some taste of that missing component, then, right. Okay, then you go do that. But if you don't, you don't.
What brought you to Wesleyan's theater and music departments?
Yeah, that's an easy question. I was never actually in the music department. Although during my freshman year, I taught piano to my fellow students through the music department, and people were
So that's
actually
your
able to.
connection to the music department.
Yeah, that was, but I didn't take any classes. I didn't take any courses to the music department. Just, I wasn't at Wesleyan to go to music school. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
you were in theater.
it was. And what took me to theater, I had theater experience in high school. And I did not go to a high school that was oriented towards theater at all. But as so many people who went to Stuyvesant in my time, were fortunate to have Sterling Jensen as a teacher. And Sterling Jensen's professional actor, in Manhattan and in New York City, and had studied with Etienne Decroux, who's the same man who taught Marcel Marceau. So he was able to teach us mime and sort of a physicality of theater, not just reading lines, not just from the English point of view, or from the inside out point of view. And, this was late 60s. We have sort of had a premature introduction to what came sensitivity training and all these things, lying on the floor with the lights out, body scans, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And we were, there were very few girls at the school at that time, but we got sort of this parallel on the side elective education. Is I thought, when I went to Wesleyan, that I would be putting that aside, and focusing. I thought I'd be a government major. I had some fantasies of, I don't know what I was thinking of, doing some sort of international politics kind of thing. I thought that would be glamorous. That was my idea. That would be prestigious or whatever, or whatever like that. I realized that going in, one thing I realized is that I had a pretty severe mental illness, and spent pretty much the entirety of my sophomore year, performing my life and being in, some sort of paralysis and illness, which I started to come out of when I went to Paris in the first semester of my junior year. And that was an awakening time. But what I discovered was I really did not enjoy or felt it was good for my mental health to be having all my work be in isolation. I wasn't cut out to be by myself in a library. I wasn't cut out to have my work being done only for my own benefit, or to be competing against others, or to be doing something just on my own, so I could.
Which is the
my own
plight
score.
of many university students.
So
Yes.
the theater department was a place where I could work collaboratively, where pretty much all the work was collaborative, where I could help be mobilized by other people and mobilize other people. I could play different roles as not only as a director or as an actor, but as a lighting person or a props person or a stage manager, or, and then, Alpha Delta, which I joined, was a very supportive environment for that kind of thing. And there were a lot of musicians and literary types and, artsy types. And even the folks who were humanities and science folks were there because they had some element of that, side to them.
Right.
And, people like Wes Brown and Michael Menard and, and Sam Lowe, the late Sam Lowe, who, and people like that. And so many others were just big influences on me, and, even people like J. Mark Bemis who are not in the arts, other people, I just go on. And that's just the guys. There are a lot of women too, who and so having the close relationships at Alpha Delta of people living together and having to work democratically to figure out how to deal with people using too much toilet paper or whatever we were dealing with, and producing, arts events for the Wesleyan community. And between that and the theater department, it got me through. And then the other thing that got me through was the reason I came to Wesleyan as opposed to, like, say, Williams or Amherst. So coming out of Stuyvesant, I was looking for something small. I was coming out of New York City. I did not want to go to a big campus. I felt like I needed a small environment, but I didn't want to be in a totally rural environment. And I didn't want to be in an exclusively college town. So Middletown comes close, but it's not. It's got a whole other dimension to it, which is a non-Wesleyan dimension. And that attracted me. I felt I wouldn't have to completely give up the ethnic diversity racial diversity that I'd gotten used to at Stuyvesant in New York, which was so valuable to me, especially late 60s, early 70s. So coming back after my first semester junior year in Paris, that's when I realized, based on experiences I had, that's something that I had tried to work with children within the Middletown public schools, doing theater with my friend Al Medlinski, 74, and others, and felt very frustrated that I felt there was just a culture class. They didn't get it. In Paris, I was reading Deschooling Society by Ivan Illich and Pedagogy of the Oppressed by Paulo Freire, and on and on. And I completed the radicalization that had started in Stuyvesant. And I don't use that term lightly. I don't use it even in a political sense. I use it in a turning around of your worldview kind of sense, right? So coming back, I found Alida J, who was doing work with Maplewood Terrace kids, just off the cuff, just being herself with the kids, showing up in her van and doing whatever, improv with them and games with them and stuff. And I said, can we start something that's a performing arts thing for kids that's not connected to the school system, but it's run on our own philosophy, like just rolls the way we roll already. She was into it and we did it. And we got other people together, including Amy Bloom, who went on to become an author. And I really recommend, I will pull her book off the shelf, but Amy's work is great to read.
Amy Bloom, yeah.
She's a great novelist.
And you work with Alida J.
And Alida, yes, Alida, and I, got some other folks around us. All kinds of people. I don't want to give you the long list of names. Pete Olj, Sandy Cohn, Anita Hirsch, and we started Oddfellows. And I was just down there on Sunday teaching a performing arts education workshop to a bunch of performing arts educators. That was a really great experience. It was kind of a coming home, threads gathering kind of thing. So that's the theater thing at Wesleyan was for my own mental health and my own well-being, but it was also a vehicle in which there was an opening for me to live out my ideas about education, which were so different from almost diametrically opposed to the environment.
Yeah, and you mentioned Paulo Freire, and I read that during Wesleyan as well as part of a class. I can't remember her name right now. I'm having a senior moment, but the concept of teaching with, as a cultural education, as a liberating force, that took me in a direction that I pretty much stayed with all my life. And
tell me about that. Tell me more about that.
My entire career, I worked in government, in state of Michigan government and federal government. And everywhere I went, there was a need for some type of training, teaching, understanding how to do public service the right way. And so many people come into government learning to do public service the wrong way. We're bureaucrats, you do it this way. We're here to serve you, however, you need to do it this way. And so when I came in, I got involved in some training projects to teach people how to honor and protect the public while they're doing public service. And even to the point of doing technology, designing technology that was easier to do and easier to interface with and interact with the public, so that people's stories could be heard, and then they could hear themselves and understand where they were at and who they're dealing with, instead of just being sent along a path where they are pushed and people come out saying, you know, the government's pretty oppressive. So what I tried to do is my little corner of government was not going to be as oppressive, because I was training people to do it that way.
I bless you. Thank you so much for carrying that energy forward. I mean, I can't thank you enough. I can't thank you enough, Byron. I just can't thank you enough. I don't have to say it over and over. Thank you.
Well, you know, and that's what we do. I mean, you're doing it in whatever, I mean, you say you can't change New York City and you can't change Stuyvesant, but you can change your corner of Worcester, Mass.
Well, I don't know if I can or I can't change Stuyvesant. I just make a decision not to test that out.
Yeah.
I'm not, that's,
yeah.
I don't want, right now I don't feel like changing everywhere at once. I'd be where I am. You know, I don't really get to talk about Wesleyan or revisit those years in my mind very often. It just, I'm not in an environment where very many people know what Wesleyan is or would recognize that name, or I mean, a few people would, but it's not, I'm not in that zone. And I
know, I live most of my life in Michigan.
yeah, and you know, people don't even know where Middletown is in Connecticut. That there's a Middletown. Don't tell me it's in the middle. Yes, you're right. Like that's about the sense. Whatever. You actually started to ask me. You know, when I got to Wesleyan, there was a lot of culture shock for me. I had never been in a predominantly white Protestant environment ever in my life. I don't have any Christian awareness or Christian upbringing. It's come upon me slowly through self-education and, you know, playing for Catholic Mass. They don't pay great, but they do pay. And like that, or whatever, all kinds of things, and participating in Unitarian church when my kids were being brought up, and that was a good place for them. But and they don't call themselves Christian.
Who are your people? Huh? Where do you come from?
I'm Jewish, but not raised religiously.
Okay.
In fact,
you mentioned Brooklyn.
No, I grew up in Queens. My
Queens.
Parents and grandparents all grew up in Brooklyn. You know, Stuyvesant takes kids from all over the city. So, you know, I didn't go to high school.
You were a New Yorker.
Yes.
That's your cultural orientation. You were a New Yorker.
Yeah. And then I left for Wesleyan. When I got to Wesleyan, the whole like prep world and that whole thing, that was interesting. And I realized I talked funny. I'm talking like I talk now, even I'm a little more moderated than when I was talking the way I came to school, but I had to change my voice. So I began to have a more moderate mid-Atlantic accent. So I'm speaking to you the way I'm speaking to you now, instead of the way I used to speak when I came to Wesleyan.
Yes. Lots of us had to do that, you know.
Yes. So that was an interesting thing. And as a theater person, maybe I had some more awareness of that, you know, but I just learned how to speak. I didn't really speak WASP, but I learned how to smooth out the non-WASP features.
Yeah.
so I didn't, so to blend in or to sound civilized or to whatever,
Well, that's an interesting topic that we could probably go hours
boy,
on.
I'll say, I'm sure lots of people had that experience.
Yeah. And I even heard somebody talking about that here in the local Montreal press about Asians trying to fit into Montreal and the French and the English and who you choose and that sort of thing.
I mean, yeah, I mean, in some ways, like with respect to the racial divide, I spoke like my friend John Bailey, who's 77, right? Who is an attorney, and who is my friend at Stuyvesant and my friend at Wesleyan. We speak much more alike. We have very similar intonation and speech, having both being New Yorkers, even though he's Black and I'm white. Then, so exactly. I'm not saying that there isn't a Black-white difference and divide, because there is. But I experienced it a little differently. In fact, one of the things that I don't know if you've ever read, you've read, well, another of our Wesleyan alumnus, Beverly Daniel Tatum.
Yes.
75, actually, I think, year before
yes.
me, who wrote, why are all the Black kids sitting in the cafeteria together, right?
Right.
Which is a really great book from not only the excellence of the psychology and the research, but the educational insights in the book. It's a book that I wish I had available to me at an earlier time of my life, but it was still valuable. But I think
it does explain a few things that people don't want to think about usually.
They're so brilliant. Wow. Record that. I'm a totally Beverly Tatum fan. I mean, it's just great.
Yeah, anyway, we went to the University of Michigan. She was at the University of Michigan.
Oh, really?
When I got there for graduate school.
I never knew her. I mean, I just knew she was, but then the thing was that all of a sudden, having had quite a number of Black friends, especially doing theater at Stuyvesant, which was an area where there was a, that was the place if you're going to make kids who were gay, even if they weren't able to come out at that time. That's where they were. That's what, that's where we had, there was more heterogeneity in that world, in the New York, world, especially in the late 60s, early 70s, than there was in a lot of places. And that doesn't mean I didn't experience racial tension at Stuyvesant. I did too, because there were things I wasn't hep to, at that time, didn't appreciate, but that was part of my awakening. I mean, I have a lot of really powerful stories about being called out in those days in a way that I wouldn't have happened to me if I'd not gone to Stuyvesant, But that had
cool. And then you came to Wesleyan, where everything like that was pretty much the same, but kind of toned down a little bit.
Well, but people were in there. It was much more important for Black people at Wesleyan to circle the wagons.
Yes.
It was incredibly important for survival, for maintenance. I mean, if I felt alienated and weird in that environment, oh my God. So, and of course, so many heroic people, I mean, Jay Hogarth, people who are just, June Jeffries, all these people just.
Yeah, June, yeah.
And such took that education and went into the world and have been, changing things around and illuminating things.
Like a lot of
that generation too, right? That generation. So Malcolm X House, I was, despite, my experience, it was still because of the sort of wagon circling feeling and the Black kids sitting at the cafeteria table. I remember signing up for Esteban Vega's Black Drama course, which held at Malcolm X. I think I was the only white person in the class. I wasn't doing that to be like woke or some other blah blah thing. That just
I don't think we were doing woke back then.
No, whatever. What I'm saying is it was a little nervous making. People weren't, giving me high fives in that class or whatever. Nobody was like nasty or anything. I was maybe more toned down in that class than I would have been, in a predominantly white class. But August Wilson, all the stuff, Lorraine Hansberry, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I needed to know that stuff. That was just an extension of who I was, and
And Wesleyan was a place where you could do that if you so chose to do that.
Right. It was a little nervous making, but I'm a bit extrovert. So what? Whatever.
Well, like I wanted to live in the Malcolm X house. I couldn't get in. So I lived across the street in La Casa Huacampos, the Latin house.
Yes.
And that was eye-opening for me.
Yes.
So I understood a whole nother part of culture that I had not been in, from Detroit in the Midwest, not exposed. Right. So that's why I said Wesleyan was an opportunity for lots of us, if we chose to expose ourselves to folks, people, cultures, things in a safe place,
I didn't have the same connections with, Latinx community at Wesleyan. Remember, like people like Adalia, who's so beautiful, and some of my other people, I didn't feel like I knew them well.
But that's what Wesleyan is. I mean, there was a Jewish community house. There was an Asian community house. And if you knew somebody, you could end up being invited there, or that sort of thing. We all had our little enclaves. That's one part of Wesleyan that I think. I don't know if it still exists on campus anymore.
Well, I've always been sort of a little bit of an enclave traveler. And I think being a piano teacher is a great way for that, because I have firefighters, students, cops as students, all whatever, CEOs, whatever, everybody, and people from all over the world. It's like there aren't too many barriers to who wants to learn how to play piano, like all kinds of people.
So you don't just teach kids.
No.
You could teach me a few things then.
My youngest, I don't take students younger than 5, but I have 75 plus students.
Okay.
I mean, 75 age plus students. I don't have over 75 students, thank God.
Because Nat, I've been trying to figure out how to use this thing. Oh, you can't see it. I'm trying to hold it up.
You're actually you're breaking up, Brian. This is very scary now.
Okay.
I know. As a Buddhist,
cut out.
I know as a Buddhist that fundamentally everything's empty and we have no actual abiding substance, but it's still a little kind of scary.
Yeah.
I wasn't really ready for it. Like,
you figured me out. Oh, now what am I going to do?
It's okay. If you can just assemble a few molecules here for me, just for a moment. So you're going to show me a keyboard or show me something?
I have a keyboard that I have difficulty understanding what to do. I'll tell you this though. Nat. I used to dream that I could play the piano, and it would show up in repetitive dreams.
And that wasn't enough for you?
I guess it will have to be, because I tinker on this thing, and one day I'm going to have to take some lessons so I can know what I'm doing. I bang on it, and get it to do a few things that are somewhat satisfying. So.
Well, I would say, when the pandemic came, I had to learn how to teach online. And now that I can do it, I'm aware that I can take students from anywhere in the world, but I don't. I feel like there's such a value in being in space with people, that even if people don't want to do that now, I don't want to take the students for whom there isn't a potential for me to be in the room with them. If not now, then soon at some point, or in the case where it's really necessary, then we can do it once or whatever it happens to be. But, of course, we can do a few free online lessons. No problem. You're giving me all this great airtime. I owe you something.
Okay, deal. We'll make an arrangement. You'll teach me something. You teach me how to play something.
Yeah.
that I
If
can
it's
remember.
electronics,
So
I'm not sure I can teach you that.
So I have a learning disability that I've hidden most of my life, and I know you work with folks who have disabilities, and so maybe you're the type of person who could understand me. I don't memorize. That's why I never got involved in theater. That's why I did radio, because I could hold the script up in front of me and not know, and I could interpret it and not have people know that I'm not memorizing it. I don't memorize anything.
You're not a retainer.
I'm not a retainer. I can retain the concept.
Right. You retain some
Emotion.
things. Right.
Yeah.
Not detailed content, but you can retain the container. You have the container, which enables you to generate all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
The stuff itself, you're not trying to nail that down in stone, so you can repeat it at will without a memory aid.
Yeah. For example, I mean, I have read lots of stuff on religion, on Buddhism, on Christianity, on Judaism, and I understand the concepts, but don't ask me to quote anything, please.
Right. Well, so what? That's mostly like decorative. You have a little quote here. It makes you seem knowledgeable. It makes you seem like, it's like decorative, the quote stuff.
I carry those in my pocket so I can pull them out.
Right. I got a couple of James Baldwin quotes. I got a couple of these, a couple of those. I throw, it makes me seem, a little educated. I like that.
Yeah. So that's how I learn.
Sometimes
so
it gets,
now my learning style.
Get somebody to listen to me because I got a quote,
Okay.
But you don't really, it's not necessary. It's useful. A couple of quotes is useful.
Yeah.
You can have a little like those carpet sample things. And you say, oh, wait a second. I think I got a quote for that. Oh, yay. And then like that. You can do that.
Well, I'd have to get up and speak in front of people. And I always I love using PowerPoints because then, the quotes are behind me. I can talk the concept. The quotes are behind me.
It seems like you got it lined up. It sounds like feels like you've compensated for your disability admirably.
Yeah. So I'm gonna do a segue. Tell me about the group that you're working with and how you work with them.
So I was I don't mind saying I was very ill for a long time, for about 5 years almost. But that was the time in which I was doing Take Down the Wall Cafe, actually.
Yeah, Take Down the Wall Cafe.
But that was Take Down the Wall Cafe is. So I mean, these threads are it's hard to pick up one thread, but when I met the mother of my children, it was through, the concept of kids who couldn't bring themselves to go to school, who were being seriously emotionally damaged by their school experience. And from that, I sort of segued out of my relationship with her, largely, and what she was doing, into disability justice kind of stuff, which grew out of my education work, but then more like intergenerationally. What does disability justice look like in the community? And then working to create opportunities for people with disabilities are probably I would say, even more than dying people. Other than dying people, disability people are the most segregated.
They are.
People. Because, I mean, so many of them, either their encounters are either with other people who with disabilities, or their own families, or their providers, people who are agency people or otherwise providing for them. So for people in the community at large to have sustained ongoing relationships with people with disabilities and vice versa is something that is a state to be desired, we have to work hard to promote that. And so that's what I was doing for a long time. From the time I got to Worcester in 2000. So Take Down the Wall Cafe was just one of the several things I did, but it was an open mic. It was a monthly open mic that brought people with and without disabilities together, both as performers and as audience. Not performing together, because most of the performances were solo performances.
Okay.
You know, music or poetry or something, or spoken word or storytelling or poetry, whatever it was.
A safe place for people to
For everybody,
self-express.
yeah,
Yeah.
including people from the community at large, you know, who
Cool.
were also, so we did it for 5.5 years, but when the pandemic hit, I didn't want to do it virtually. I didn't want to move it out.
So you're not continuing it virtually. Okay.
So what happened was, no, I didn't want to. I felt the whole point of the whole thing was for people to be sharing space. And so at that time, when the pandemic started, I was also coming out of this severe period of my own disability. And I pivoted sort of into racial justice stuff from disability justice stuff. And now the pandemic's ending, I don't feel like I want to pivot back to disability justice stuff because I already have commitments on the racial justice stuff. Of course, it's all intersectional, it's all connected. It's all about the same way we deal with each other.
It's about being good humans to each other.
Yes, it's about
you and I, we need to connect.
Empathy,
we need to connect on some of this stuff.
Joy, empathy, and curiosity, you know,
Yes.
and not whatever, the absence of those things. So,
so what are you doing right now?
well, you know, the group that I'm working with now is, you know, SURGE, which is a national organization showing up for racial justice. It's an organization which is predominantly white people who are learning how to dismantle white supremacy through altering their perception, actually, of how to act socially in a way that empowers and supports BIPOC leadership.
There you go.
So we are
allies.
We are disciplined. Yes, I'm not even sure I like the word allies, but I'll go with it. Fine. You know, to me, it's like you say, it's about being a friend, right?
Yeah, that's friends and allies being good to each other.
See, I want to be a friend after the whole ally thing has gone by.
Yes.
Once they're calling it something else, I'm
Thank
still
you.
going to be a friend. You know what I'm saying? Once they've gone through all the various permutations of the language and this vogue and that vogue, I'm still doing what I'm doing. I just, you know, this is just whatever. It's not subject to the winds, or it hasn't been subject to the winds, right?
Yeah,
so,
it's about love.
It's about, yes, man, that is what it's about. It's what it's about. And you either do it, you don't. And if you don't, you practice it, you fake it till you make it, whatever. And some days you don't, of course.
Well, you can learn. You can learn to love.
You can learn to love.
Love.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Well, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
That's what's going to save your backside in the end, you know? And so.
And you're doing some crazy performances too, because I saw you're doing.
And I love my performing life. I love it. I mean, it's great. The place that I was playing so much for 12 years, Nick's closed recently, transferred ownership, and that was a lot of mourning in the community. But there are other venues, and they're being developed. And so I think that, but in SURGE, I'm in this education justice work group, and we just work to support BIPOC-led organizations in Worcester. Sometimes we do research. Sometimes we just ask, what are the priorities? What do you need us to do? Sometimes we have to step out and go, hey, we became aware of this. We haven't heard a lot about this. from you guys, but are you interested in this? We found out this awful thing is happening and something like that. So, it's like, it's a little bit, we try to be a little symbiotic about it. And I mean, what is our role? What is our role as white activists within a non-white supremacy context? And how do we, at the same time, we need to honor the history that produced our racial differences and not get into the sort of, because one of the dangers of like just color blindness is that you sort of can ease into like a white default.
Right.
This universal kind of thinking.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Well,
then,
no, we're not talking about color blindness. That's another
that's a
one
whole other
worn
thing.
out
We're not talking
idea.
about that. We're talking about actual equity. We're talking about
Yes.
people being able to be themselves and learn from each other and value each other and respect each other's autonomy, but still have a permeable membrane. We're permeating each other in some equitable, healthy way, wholesome way.
Yeah.
Not an unwholesome domination, submission, or exclusionary way. In addition, so in Surge, in order to belong to a work group, a working group, or an action group, like an education justice group, we all have to belong to affinity groups. And it's within our white affinity groups that we look inward and we see how we're manifesting our unconscious bias or how we're learning about and studying and learning what we don't know. So we're not asking Black people to teach us or BIPOC people to teach us that. So I just have a tight group. We're just 4 of us. And
you're doing your homework.
We just go down. We go deep. Sometimes we go so deep, it's we have to step out and do something a little bit more hors d'oeuvre. You know what I'm saying? We don't leave it. We don't walk away, but we just do something a little lighter.
Well,
like after you spend 3-4 months with the new Jim Crow, it's like you gotta maybe do something just a little, I don't know how to say it, just then you go back, so we keep just, I don't think we go easy on ourselves. We just got to keep it real.
So you picked this up during the pandemic.
No, I think coming out of the pandemic, I wasn't able to. So just before the George Floyd thing happened, I would say so March of April, just when the pandemic was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking around for something local that I could do, but that had some genuineness about it. And Surge seemed to fit the bill. And there are still things about it I'm still feel there's another thing I need to go forward to do. I don't think we have time to go into that today, but
but 4 years from now, when we get back together for our 50th reunion,
I can be clear about that.
We'll be able to talk about change
that's
generated by things that you're doing right now.
So the next 4 years for me is the question is how do I integrate Buddha Dharma into all the stuff that I'm doing and not be completely alone in it? Because I know there are national groups, like I'm connected with Reverend Angel Kyoto Williams, who has this Liberation Life Network, and that was influenced for me by the book Radical Dharma, which was very influential for me. And but it's still that doesn't quite hit the locally embedded kind of Dharma that I'm looking for. Although it's very informative and fueling. It's not.
Well, Nat, you got to build a group. You got to.
Yes. Well, that's where I'm at, and I'm just trying to think how can I be a leader without having to have a role as like some sort of Buddhist teacher, which I don't want to be, or don't want to be now. So we have to see. That's an open thing, but I'm working on it, and it's not far away. It's like this year, at some point.
Well, we'll stay in touch.
Hope so. Well, yeah, you get those piano lessons.
Yeah. So we'll have some time to. Talk.
Is it okay if I don't print out a coupon? We're gonna have a virtual coupon. Woo, coupon.
All right.
You get 3. I'm gonna give you 3, and then we have to do this again if you get more.
Yeah, and we'll do it again. We'll do it again with some other folks too. So
all right, I'm up.
So I know our time is running out.
Yes, yes,
here.
we should, this is a good place to stop, don't you think?
Yeah, I need to let you go. Thanks, Nat. This
Thanks,
has been
Byron.
really great. We'll get in touch.
All right, it's nice to have this connection with you. You're a beautiful person. I appreciate all you've done. I want to hear more about your training people for good governance. Take care now. Bye-bye.